I am very excited about today's training. Today, we are going to be listening to another sales call recording, one that I have coached the agent on already, but I wanted to do something a little bit different today. I wanted to insert kind of like multiple choice questions that I want you to think about and answer as we go along this discovery part of the conversation so that you can get an insight look into how you would actually respond or think about a customer situation to see if it really aligns with how I teach and if you're really starting to get it. If you're just now finding me, my name is Dana Neeson. I am the telesales manager for Tailored Legacy, and we sell final expense insurance over the phone across 17 states. And I am here to help you have more elevated and stronger sales conversations. The call that I'm going to be sharing with you today was actually a really, really great call. And it was done by one of my agents who has been with me for several months, who actually has separate training through NEPQ, but unfortunately missed the buying sign here, missed the customer's true situation and failed to identify it, which ended up coming to bite him at the end. So I'm going to use this call as a training opportunity for you. Before we start, I want to really emphasize one thing with you, that the average duration that somebody watches one of these training videos from start to finish is not even half of the video, which makes me believe that you're interested in getting additional training for yourself to have better conversations, but you're not interested enough to watch the whole thing through. Or our society has created such an ADHD mentality that if the screen isn't changing every 2 seconds and my angle isn't changing every 1 minute, that you're going to get bored. So I just want to encourage you to take your sales career serious. That even though I don't have some fancy studio that I'm recording from that updates with different images and pictures every 30 seconds for you, that you take your career serious enough to be able to watch a training video from start to finish. I think it's really important for your learning. And it's also really important for me to really understand if what content I'm providing out there is actually valuable and worth watching. So anyway, without further ado, let's get started on this call.
Hello, Melinda. Hello, Melinda.
Yes.
Hi, Melinda. It's just Eddie here. I was wondering if you could maybe help me out for a minute.
Sure.
Yeah, so I noticed that you may have inquired online to possibly look at some coverage for you and your family. Has your phone been ringing off the hook lately?
Yes.
I'm so sorry about that. I know how frustrating that can be. And so to be honest, I'm not sure if what we do can even help you yet. But I am curious though, what caused you to start looking for some protection for you and your family in the first place?
Well, I have a little amount of insurance from my company that I retired from. So I need additional income. So, practicality, if you go, which I don't intend.
Of course.
I want it like I'm 100 years old.
Yeah.
Something to.
Okay, before we continue, you should probably rewind that and write down that outbound intro call, which is now something that we have adopted for our whole team. Eddie did leave a little sentence out that he didn't feel was appropriate for this, but essentially that right there should be worth its weight in gold for you as you're making outbound calls. And we're going to start with our first quiz question right here. The answer to that question was D, all of the above. This intro is very, very disarming, not coming in with the same approach that everybody else is. So I was wondering if you could maybe help me out for a minute. And that is a straight NEPQ line that actually translates very well into the life insurance space. But additionally, we're also acknowledging right up front that their phone may have been ringing off the hook, which will be disarming. And then we're also acknowledging how that might be making them feel. All of that is really humanizing the conversation and disarming the customer. But lastly, we do say something that makes us not sound like a salesperson at all. Did you catch what that was? If your answer was, I'm not sure if we can even help you in the first place, then you're right. By saying that, as opposed to what a lot of agents do, which is, oh, I'm so glad we're on the phone. I know I can definitely help you, right? You have just labeled yourself as a salesperson. You have commission breath all over you, and you're assuming the sale, which is what we don't want to do, guys. All right, let's continue with this call.
Not have to.
I retired from, so I need additional income. So, you know, practicality, if you go, which I don't intend.
Of course.
I want it like I'm 100 years old.
Yeah.
Something to, you know.
Yeah, you're not planning on it for tomorrow, but you know, even then, we never know, right?
That's right. Yeah. The more you're older, the more expensive it is. So that's
Right.
why I was looking for something affordable. But with my age and my husband's age, it's expensive.
Right. And it definitely does not have to be expensive, because you're always going to be in control of the pricing. You know, impossible for someone to get you to pay for something that, you know, isn't in your budget. And so that's definitely something that's going to be in your control. I do need to let you know that the call.
Okay. So what Eddie said was actually, you know, pretty good, where it's impossible for it to be too expensive because it's ultimately just in your control anyways. But what do you think he could have said differently that may have engaged the client to give him a little bit more insight into what she actually meant when she said everything's too expensive? If your answer was, how do you mean by too expensive? You're getting it. That's all really he had to say in order to get a better understanding of what the customer meant when she said it's too expensive. That's really important for you to understand for a lot of reasons. But ultimately, if you understand what is starting to feel too expensive for your client, you already know what to stay away from when it comes to giving quotes to your client at the end. You're getting these little mini clues along the way that help uncover what your customer is actually looking for and what's important to them. Let's continue.
We need to let you know that the call may be monitored or recorded today for quality assurance.
That's fine. So what is this again? What company?
Yes, so of course, my name is Eddie and I represent Lincoln Heritage, right? And so can you walk me through like what type of life insurance you have now in case something were to happen to you?
Well, I have the Navy Exchange insurance actually for my company. And I do have surviving benefits. I have, you know, I have my insurance for the company, life insurance.
Okay. Okay. And you said it was going to be for yourself and your husband as well. Is that right?
No, my husband has his own from the military.
From the military. Okay. So you were just more looking for yourself?
Yes, because he has better coverage than me. Because I didn't realize when I retired, my 250 coverage will go down to my basic pay, just one coverage instead of triple. So. Right.
Okay. And so before today, were you out there looking for the right type of policy to put in place?
Okay. So the question that Eddie just asked is a good question. It's a question that's on our script, but he actually missed a very, very important question in between the answer that he just got or the information he just got from the customer and the question he's about to ask. Do you know what it is? Hopefully your answer was something along the lines of how much coverage does the policy you have right now from your job have? Because what the customer actually said was she started at 250,000 and when she retired, it dropped down to a basic pay. And I don't know about you, but I have no idea what basic pay means. So that's a really big clue that if you don't understand something, you need to ask. So you should definitely be asking, how do you mean by basic pay? Or so you started at 250, and so what do you have now? That's really important for you to understand, because let's pretend she has 50,000 now. You might want to know, so how much more are you looking to get in addition to the 50? Or maybe she would have said 5, or maybe she would have said 10. We actually have no idea because the agent did not ask. It's also really important to know, because we're about to ask kind of what expenses she is wanting the insurance to take care of if something does happen to her. And if we don't know how much coverage her work policy provides, then we're not going to be able to make really strong recommendations about that deficit, about how much more she might need, and always reference back to the policy she has now to really elevate ourselves as someone who's trying to help her understand the full picture, not just being very one-sided and only focusing on what we have and how much we can provide. You have to go 10 steps further and get as much information as you can about their situation, including how much coverage she currently has. How could we possibly know how much to quote her at the end if we don't have any idea what she really needs? Okay, so that's a really important thing that he missed here that I know he's not going to do again. Let's continue.
I have global life but I suspended because I cut it off because it increased without them telling me that it's going to increase. So
Wow.
yeah, I don't like that. So
Gosh, I'm so sorry. Did they tell you from the beginning that it was going to increase though?
no, nothing like that. So
Really? How long were
all
you
of a
paying on it?
sudden, for a year actually, and then all of a sudden it went up without an advance notice. So I canceled it.
Yeah, it's not fair to you guys. I know we want to go for the most affordable type of plan, and then the next year it goes up, right? So it doesn't become the most affordable plan anymore. And so before today, were you already out there looking for something better to put in place?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have told me, give me quote, but I didn't go through it. I still have to think.
Right.
Because I really have insurance from my company, so I'm not at need at the moment. But I'm still shopping because remember, my 250 went to my basic pay. So yeah.
Right. And so what do you think has prevented you in the past, from getting your own life insurance policy that you don't have to worry about it going up or down?
Because I have one from my company and they did not explain to me that when you retire, it's going to go down to your basic pay.
Okay.
I wasn't, because I worked there for 29 years. And so I'm comfortable with my lifetime insurance that it's going to stay. But when I retired, it went to whoop. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, it goes down. And so now for everyone, it is different though, Melinda. Like it, just depends on what.
Okay, we're going to stop here again. I want you guys to understand right now that Melinda, who's the customer, she just told Eddie how to help her. At this point, we are 5 minutes and 12 seconds into the call, and I already know exactly what I have to say and what I have to do to motivate this customer to move forward with making a decision with me. And unfortunately, Eddie did miss it. So I want you guys to think about for a moment, what did she just say in the last minute or so that I was playing the call? There was a lot going on there, but what specifically happened to where you should have been getting a really big aha moment? Time for another quiz. All right, so here are some answers for you. A, she had a policy with Globe, but then canceled it because it went up in price and nobody told her. B, she had a policy with work and it went down when she retired and nobody told her. But she brought up that basic pay again. You definitely need to know how much coverage that provides, because she's also said, well, I don't really need it because I already have this policy from my job that I can carry with me. So once again, we absolutely need to know how much coverage that provides so we can provide some sense of urgency for the deficit of what she still might need. And also, she also told Eddie that she's gotten quotes from other people, but she didn't move forward because she still has to think. So think about everything that we just heard. What is the emotion? I want you to think about what is the emotion that this person must be going through that's preventing her from making a decision. What's the emotion? The emotion is fear. She is afraid of making another bad decision, and she has trust issues. So what I had coached Eddie to do when we were listening to this call together, I would have kind of recapped with her everything that I just heard, something to the effect of, wow, it sounds like you've just had some experiences recently where your policy changed and kind of nobody told you. You were really unaware that that was going to happen to you. And so it sounds like that you're probably having a hard time, trusting people, and probably a little bit afraid of making another decision that's going to end up costing you another year's worth of payments because something might happen. Is that sound right to you? I also might have said, now, when you got that policy in the mail from Globe, did you happen to open it up? And depending on what she would have said, if she would have said, yeah, I opened it up, I might say, now there's probably a lot of pages in there. And I imagine that might be a little bit even confusing to look through and even understand what it says. Did you have someone that could kind of walk you through the policy pages to make sure that you actually, got what you thought you were getting? And more than likely, she might say, well, I probably didn't think I had to because I thought I knew what I was getting. And so bringing all that stuff to the surface is going to bring up a lot of the deep-seated feelings that are happening right now, where I would have an opportunity to kind of really hold her hand and say, look, what I'm hearing is that you do have a smaller amount of coverage that you still can carry through from your work, but it sounds like that you're worried that it may not be enough, which is why you're continuing to search for additional coverage for your family, but you're stuck. It sounds to me like you're stuck because really you don't really trust anyone anymore, which you have every right to. And so you're probably afraid of making another wrong choice. Does it sound like I got that right? And when she says yes, now I have accurately described how her situation is making her feel. And if you can do that, your customer will now start to feel like you are going to be the answer to their problems and that you are going to be able to help them solve it. And at that point, I would virtually take her hand and say, I understand why you would feel that way. But I want you to know that whether you decide to move forward with me or not, that if you do, I will make sure that when you get that policy in the mail, that you and I will go through it together so that you understand it and you can make sure it's exactly what I said that it will be, that you don't ever have to worry about the policy going up in price, that you don't ever have to worry about it canceling or the coverage going down without you knowing it. Because really what I think that ultimately that's preventing you from making a decision is you're just afraid that people are just trying to sell you something for their benefit and not caring about you. So this is a lot, you guys, but this right here, this is what will sell the policy. And customers will tell you every time exactly what they need to hear in order to get you to sell them. It's the clues. You have to listen for the clues. And she actually gave him a lot more through the rest of Discovery. So we're going to listen to the rest of the Discovery and talk a little bit more about good things he said or what to say, what not to say, ask you a couple more quiz questions. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a much better handle on what you have to do. All right, this is part 2 of the video that I tried to get done last week, but just got way too busy and distracted and couldn't finish it. So we are going to continue with this conversation with one of the agents. We're going to finish up the Discovery portion and pick up where we left off. Here we go.
For you, what were those expenses that you were most concerned about your family having to pay when you do pass?
Well, you know, the funeral alone, and I don't have a lot of that because I paid my not a lot of that, but you know, when you go, I want my family to not be burdened with funeral costs,
Yeah.
and that. So
Right. Yeah, it's a big bill to leave behind and someone else to cover.
exactly.
Right. And so, you know, God forbid you were to pass away tomorrow, right? Because no one knows the day or the hour. Who in your family, Amelinda, would be the one responsible for going down to the funeral home, meeting with the director and having to pay for, you know,
My
the cost?
husband. Yeah, my husband.
You'd be your husband. Okay.
Mm.
And so I imagine you probably don't want, you know, your husband to have to pay for all those expenses if he didn't have
Of
to,
course.
right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so your husband not having to pay for those expenses, you know, why is that so important to you now?
Okay, so that was a classic NEPQ question that we teach our agents to ask to continue to peel those layers and dig deeper, get under the surface of the root of the problem, because it's the obvious is we don't want to be a burden on our loved ones when we pass. But the less obvious would be their reason why. And everybody's reasons are going to be slightly different. They might all have the same theme, but it's not just what their reason is. It's getting them to say it out loud so that it continually reinforces what they want to do and why they want to do it.
So that he's not burdened with my with that. I don't want him to have that.
Yeah, you don't want him to have to just come out of pocket for all that money. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
Although in the military we do have free lot where we're going to be buried, but still the expenses for the services is a lot.
What's a lot? Have they given you like a breakdown of what it's going to cost?
Yeah, it's probably around 25,000.
25,000, really?
Mm,
Wow. Yeah, that's not cheap at all.
yeah.
It's a lot of money. And so just so I can get a clear picture though, have you by chance?
This is also where I'm going to come back to this other policy that she has that was grandfathered to her through work. This is also another moment where we really need to understand how much she currently has, what she's calling basic pay, because I still don't know what that means. So if in her mind, she thinks that just the services are going to be 25,000, we need to know what she has so that we can speak to that and start creating a deficit for how much more she might need to go towards these funeral expenses, as well as what else she might want to leave to her husband on top of that.
Given any thought to whether you prefer a simple cremation or maybe a traditional burial with a plot, a casket, and a headstone?
For nowadays, it's cremation. It's not. Yeah. Why would you pay a lot of stuff when you're gone?
Right.
I'm a practical person.
I like that. Yeah, it's easy, it's simple. It's just cremate me and then move on, right?
Yep. Hmm.
Was there anything special that you wanted your family to do with your ashes once they have them?
Water. I love water.
Spread across the ocean?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And so have you ever thought about, what would happen if you kept shopping around and everything that you were looking for was just a little bit more than you thought it was going to be? And then you ended up doing nothing at all. What would it look like for your husband then? What would he have to do?
It's okay. He still have I have 401k. He can dip.
Right. Do you want him to have to use the 401k money if he didn't have to, though?
Of course, yeah, no.
Right. Why wouldn't you want him to use the 401k money, though?
So for him to survive when he's older, of course, he has money.
Okay, so that was also a very advanced probing technique that we teach the team, which is anytime you're able to uncover a plan B, which this agent did a phenomenal job at, right? Have you thought about what would happen if you didn't do anything at all? But what I really want you to pay attention to is his focus was based on price. What have you thought about what would happen if you couldn't find anything that was affordable, right? And I think that focus was misguided. So here's another quiz for you. Where do you think the focus should have been, knowing what you know up until this point based on what we've talked about? So your focus should have been more along the lines of being able to trust somebody enough to be able to move forward with making that decision. Because remember, this customer's biggest fear is not price, it's trust, right? Trust because her work policy went down and she didn't know. Number two, she did end up getting a GLOW policy and then it went up after a year and she didn't know. So you have to focus on their fear. And in this case, it wasn't about price, right? Just because a lot of your customers will be focused on price doesn't mean everybody was. And this is where you have to really have your active listening skills kick into high gear. So the consequence question was still good because we were able to even identify now that the husband will still be okay because she has a 401k. But how to overcome that just in case plan, the agent did a phenomenal job at saying, but is that what you really want, right? Do you really want your husband to have to rely on that 401k if he didn't have to? Well, no, I don't. And why wouldn't you want him to? And then she, go ahead and gave her reasons for that, which is he needs to survive on that if he has to use it. And now that objection is closed, right? You cannot go back to it. So a better way to have asked that consequence question, have you thought about what would happen if you just continued to shop around and you felt, you weren't comfortable enough to trust anyone to lead you in the right direction and, make you comfortable enough to make that right decision, and you just decided you weren't going to do anything at all? So the question is the same, but the thought process is slightly different, right? We're holding her hand in the beginning because we want her to feel safe. And then we're bringing it up again in the consequence question, focusing on trusting someone enough. That's what we have to bring to the forefront so that this customer feels more safe with us. All right, we're almost done.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so just so he can use it longer.
Yep.
Right. And so you're possibly thinking you just want to make a change and get some protection there.
That's correct.
Right. And so let me see if I understand, because you
summary.
definitely have had insurance and you had a bad experience with Glow because they didn't notify you. They didn't explain it. And from 1 year to the next, it went up. And
Yeah.
so recently you were looking into it a little bit more serious because, you know, you realize that if, God forbid, anything were to happen to you, it's a $25,000 bill that now your husband's responsible for. And you started
Exactly.
thinking about, you know, the impact that that would make on him. And you'd rather have
Mhm.
something in place to make sure that that's all taken care of, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And so if you could accomplish all that at something affordable to you and it would provide you that peace of mind you're looking for, that way you don't have to think about the again, that's really all you're looking for. Does it
That's
sound like I got
correct.
that
Now,
right?
I have a question for you because
Yeah.
I am American citizen. We live here in the States, you know, but
Yeah.
there are times we are in the Philippines because we have residents there. Will
Yeah.
that cover it as well, wherever?
Of course.
Okay, so the recap, I want you guys to think about how you would have done a recap, or if you don't ever do recaps, you probably should start thinking about how you can take the information that you were given from the customer based on the questions that you asked in order to then regurgitate all that information and restate it to the client so they know you were listening to them, that you understand them. So Eddie's recap was actually really good. He brought to the forefront the policy, the Globe policy that went up in price, but also then still focused on something that was affordable and not based on someone that she can trust. Ultimately, that ended up being the objection at the end when he asked for the banking information, and that fear came out. Well, I don't know if this is the right thing. I need you to send me the information so I can look at it. I need to make sure that, you know, this is what you're telling me that it is, right? That deep-seated fear is what's going to prevent her from wanting to move forward with someone else, because we can tell her anything that we want. She doesn't really know that that's true. So failing to give her that reassurance on the trust side throughout your entire conversation will increase your chances that that's going to come back at the end. And that's what happened. So lesson of the day is make sure you listen to your customers' fears. Make sure you listen to what they're telling you, because every single time they will tell you how to sell them. It's just up to you to make sure that you can listen to it and understand it so that you can figure out how to encourage, motivate, and inspire someone to get out of their own way and make a decision to say yes.